if you were to answer all their questions, they would definitely have you.
Oh yeah, they have everything they need to prosecute you.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about Operation Reticent Recall. This is the latest gun grab we see from the ATF. They're apparently going door to door, confiscating solvent traps and FRTs, which they consider suppressors and machine guns. Now, there are some questions that agents are asking folks. We're going to be going over, what types of questions they're asking and why potential answers to these questions can be so damning. So you're going to want to stick around to hear all of these questions. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's sponsor, we have to say thank you to our friends over at Legal Heat. They have trained hundreds of thousands of folks in getting their state's licenses and permits to carry. Even though we live in a constitutional carry world where most of us live in kind of free to a friendly locations, I will tell you, and Emily will tell you, getting your license or permit to carry a handgun is so stinking important should you find yourself in a defensive incident. It's some kind of magic on juries. They just really like to hear that term, licensed gun owner, whether, and we know you don't need it, but it can maybe make a difference in a criminal trial.
Right. And think about other reasons why you want to have it, right? Do you travel? Do you want that reciprocity in those states that are not constitutional carry or that don't let outside citizens constitutional carry? Do you want to bypass that background check when you're purchasing a firearm? We remember in 2020 how long it was taking the FBI to return a background check. Do you want to hassle with that, or do you want to be able to bypass it? And so many states, not all, but so many let you bypass that background check because you have a handgun license from that state. I mean, we could spend an entire video talking about why it's important to go ahead and get that handgun license, but check out Legal Heat, use promo code Armed Attorneys, or click the link in the description on this video.
So we're talking about Operation Reticent Recall, and we've seen this up on Law Firm's blog. We'll link that in the description below, and there's some questions. He has some questions that the ATF are asking. Well, let's back up a little bit. Operation Reticent Recall. What is with that name?
Right. And that's really, we've talked about this FRT confiscation in previous videos, so that part isn't new. But what's new here is we know what the operation is titled, and we're seeing, online this questionnaire that we believe, and many in the firearm community believe, may not have been intentionally distributed. Who knows? But Reticent Recall is one of the more bizarre names I could imagine.
Yeah, just call it sneaky gun thief. I don't know.
Really, is that what they're saying? It's very, very odd. I mean,
whatever definition they're using, it's not good. It's silent. It's reluctant.
Is it reluctant?
Yeah,
because you don't have to. No one's making you.
Right. So we had to, talk about the name because that seems to be a little bit of a tip off of maybe they know that they're not doing this on the up and up. But now, accompanying with this reticent recall operation, there are questions, and we've seen the ATF going door to door and asking folks questions. Always best practices. Don't speak to law enforcement without an attorney present. Don't consent to searches. Don't consent to seizures. Maybe not even opening the door, but the types of questions that they're asking are really good. This is a good opportunity to illustrate how this could implicate someone in not just maybe possessing an unregistered NFA item. That's what they're saying. Or that's the underlying crime they're investigating, but it could be some other crimes. So when we're looking at these, what kind of questions, Emily, can you imagine that they're asking?
So they want to get everything they can about where you first saw these items advertised, where you purchased them, how it came, what you intended to do with it, who else is doing it. We're seeing all, basically everything you could imagine to incriminate everyone possible. And not just that, but for, like Richard mentioned, a number of crimes, even outside of the mere possession of the item that they are alleging is illegal.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be uncommon for them to say, how did you buy this? Did you buy it with cash? Did you buy it with a credit card? Did you buy it over the phone? And I can anticipate that's a question that the agents would be asking. And this is not talking about just the possession crime. What crime could we be, could a person be implicating themselves in answering that?
Right. And, back up for a second and bear in mind that unlike the states generally play it kind of fast and loose when they prosecute you for crimes.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for the state to bring a really shaky case. The federal government is a little bit different. Most AUSAs want their case wrapped up with a beautiful bow ready to present to a jury for conviction.
Yep.
That's what they get a lot of plea bargains, because if you have been indicted by the federal government, now this is less true now than it was, let's say, 6 months ago. But generally speaking, if you've been indicted by the federal government, you are in big trouble because that case against you is probably rock solid.
Yep.
So they like to set up many different crimes so that one at least is rock solid. And one of the crimes that they love to set up is wire fraud or mail fraud.
That's why they'll ask, hey, how did you pay for this thing? Was it over the telephone? Because that implicates that wire fraud.
Yeah. Was it over was it over electronic communication? I mean, there are, for some reason, the federal government loves wire fraud and mail fraud. If they can't get you on the underlying crime, or sometimes even if they can, they still love wire fraud and mail fraud. I don't get it, but it's what they do. Yeah.
Another question that we would likely see ATF agents ask is what the person's intent was. When you purchase this forced reset trigger, when you purchase this parts kit or solvent trap, that, in our opinion, that should not be considered a suppressor. And we even saw the ATF say, these aren't suppressors. You can apply for a Form 1, get that approved. And they've changed their mind on that now. And they are saying these things are completed suppressors. But I can imagine that they're going to ask, what was your intent behind purchasing this parts kit or behind purchasing this solvent trap? And if if a person were to answer what their intent was, I intended to make this into a suppressor. I intended to mill it out or drill a hole in it or get approval from y'all via Form 1 to have an NFA item. Well, now we're, again, departing from that possession crime. This could prove up potentially another crime. And what is that?
Yeah, I think conspiracy. So look back at the indictment against Matthew Hoover. Not only are they alleging the illegal transfer of these auto key cards, which they're saying are in fact in and of themselves machine guns, but they also allege conspiracy to violate the National Firearms Act and to do these unlawful things. So I think that's what they're getting at here is, let's say the solvent trap is not milled out. And let's say that they lose that argument that before it is milled out, it is a suppressor.
Yeah, jury says, no, that's not a suppressor.
Right. But then they still want to get you on, but he said he was going to mill it out. He bought it for the purpose of.
Right.
And so they want you on that conspiracy.
Yeah, so that's just a bizarre situation because we're talking about, normally when we talk about contraband, let's say you had a kilo of cocaine in the trunk of your car. You don't get, the cops don't say, hey, did you intending to go buy a kilo of cocaine and put it in the trunk of your car later? And you say, yeah. You don't normally see them slap the cuffs on and say, we got him, boys, conspiracy to transport.
Well, that's not how possession crimes work, right? I mean, it's the possession of. It's not your intent to commit a crime. Yeah. It's just the possession. So that's why I think it's
a bizarre criminalization that I can't, Another question we might see, and we see this play out in courtrooms, and there's reasons why we have rules of evidence, but the police don't necessarily have to follow the rules, are compound questions or confusing questions or misleading questions. And so, we, based on this questionnaire we saw circulating online, it had the let's say firearm equivalent of how hard do you beat your wife? Well, that's an unfair question to ask. That wouldn't be allowed in a courtroom, but maybe a police officer could ask that out on the street. And when you have those types of things, it doesn't really matter what the answer is because it's incriminating. And what can you imagine, Emily? What would these unfair questions might look like?
Yeah. So, and again, I know it sounds like we're being really cagey here. We just don't know that the questionnaires we've seen circulating online are authentic. We don't want to speak as though they are right now. But we've seen a question that looks something like, was the solvent trap milled out before you received it, or did you yourself mill it out? That is, who committed the crime we're alleging? Some other guy, and then you possessed it, or did you actually commit it? There's not a good answer to that question. From, this preliminary questionnaire that we're seeing, if it is in fact real and accurate, it appears to me that a lot of these questions, although they will get you on the possession crimes and on everything else Richard and I have been talking about. It looks to me as though the end result may be not targeting the individual.
Yeah, I would say maybe that's if there's any kind of light at the end of the tunnel. But
it's hard to even speculate. But from the questions being asked, it's like they want to make sure that you're set up to be prosecuted for all these crimes. But also, I get a vibe. Is that a legal term?
Sure.
Right? That's by law by Taylor. I get a vibe that they are not really looking at the individual. They're looking at manufacturers, sellers, distributors. But who knows? That's the ATF of
today. Yeah,
right?
exactly right. And the ATF is not known to change their minds ever. And so, but I do get a similar impression that, the way that these things are kind of shaken out, or what we're seeing, are maybe they're not necessarily interested in individuals, but if you were to answer all their questions, they would definitely have you.
Oh, yeah. They have everything they need to prosecute you, which is why, here's the big takeaway. Let's say that the ATF shows up at your door. They hand you a questionnaire, like the one we've seen circulating online, to fill out. What do you do, Richard?
Yeah. No, you're not going to fill that out. You're going to speak to an attorney. You're not going to answer any questions, not consent to searches, not consent to seizures. That, we have to knock that into people's brains. And at that time, you need to engage in a lawyer. You need to speak about what your options are, what the possible risks and penalties are, and how to proceed from there. The great thing about having a lawyer be that kind of intermediary between you and the ATF is law enforcement can't use what your lawyer says against you. They can't force the lawyer to go up on the stand and testify about that, that attorney-client relationship, about that privileged and confidential conversation that you have. And so that's why it's really stinking important to speak to an attorney. Now, there's probably one more question that they're probably going to ask, and I think they are going to try to rat out as many people as they can.
Yeah, this is just, as a criminal defense attorney, I find this question very offensive. I don't know. It just really, it triggers me a little bit, which is what they want.
Throw up a trigger warning.
I know, right? They want you to rat out everybody else possible. Did your brother also buy one? Was it your friend who sent you the link to the website to buy one? Who have you been talking about with this? Give me every other name who could be involved in this. Not an unusual question, but also, there's a defense attorney truism that I think applies here, which is nobody talks, everybody walks. Keep that in mind. You can only talk your way into trouble, not out of it in this kind of situation. Here's how you talk yourself out of trouble is if you and your attorney, after consultation, have decided that it is in your best interest to fill out this questionnaire, to answer these questions, you should probably obtain something written from the federal government that says, in exchange, you are immune from prosecution.
Yep.
That is not unusual to get from the federal government, and there is absolutely no reason to talk yourself and talk your friends into any kind of trouble without this assurance.
Yeah, and that's another kind of sneaky trick we see from the Department of Justice and these agencies. They get all this great information from you, and then they prosecute you. And at that point, all those kind of free bargaining chips you gave up, they can't be used in your favor. They're not used to move the sentencing guidelines down. They can't be used as evidence of cooperation. Evidence of cooperation comes after a charge and after negotiation with your attorney. So those folks who say, I got nothing to hide, I just want to help, they're not going after me, they're just trying to get some extra information. Well, all those pieces of information or assistance that you give before a criminal charge, those don't get to be used in your favor should you find yourself in that unfortunate position of being charged with a federal felony. So it's a really good point that needs to be emphasized. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button. And this is huge. Help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question, comment below. We really do read them. We pull video ideas from them. It is important to us. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.